Two armed guys impose as shoppers in a supermarket, but they are actually crooks who have come to plunder the establishment. After entering the manager's office with his gun drawn, one of the men, Drago, tells him to remove the CCTV recording before telling him to empty his drawer into his leather bag. At the meantime, Bruno pulls out his gun at the mall and tells everyone to keep their cool, promising that no one will be harmed if they comply. The getaway driver, Bruno's girlfriend Annie, waits for the men in silence while sitting in the car. Bruno scoops it up, says goodbye to everyone, and they drive off to celebrate a successful heist. Drago has to plead with them to stop doing the naughty as police cars go by because Bruno keeps distracting Annie inside the car. George, the police chief, questions a criminal who has been detained more than 17 times at the station. When the robbery is brought to his table, he quickly discovers who the thieves are from the report that is given to him. It mentions that Bruno was previously arrested when he was 18 and held for 4 months. According to the other officer, the three of them stole $200,000. George instantly dismisses the other criminal in front of him by stating that he has more important things to do. When George questions the two women who assisted in identifying the culprits, they end up responding vaguely because they can't stop praising Bruno's true good looks. Bruno continues teasing Annie that he'll leap into the ocean somewhere in the city. Annie is so terrified by this that she threatens to stop loving him if he doesn't pay attention to her. Bruno leaps, indifferent to the situation. When Bruno hasn't emerged after a few minutes, Annie becomes alarmed, believing her beloved has suffered a terrible fate. Fearing the worst, she leaps in as well, hoping to find him. When Bruno emerges abruptly, they embrace, and Annie demands that Bruno swear he won't try it again. Before doing the naughty, the couple spends some quality time together and snaps photos. His girlfriend Ma quickly arrives the following day while he is enjoying himself with Drago, and the three of them have a great time. Annie declines Bruno's offer of her own portion, claiming that since they are a couple, she will get her part of whatever his share is. Bruno reveals that he occasionally buys groceries and donates them to the less fortunate, but his girlfriend chastises him for it, claiming that many people want to see him go to jail regardless of how well he uses the money. Since he is robbing the wealthy, Bruno doesn't think he has done anything illegal. Furthermore, wealthy people are rarely arrested for their crimes. The trio breaks into so many stores in the next month that they can hardly keep track. One of Bruno's cousins, Patrick, arrives during their leisure time, and they eat dinner together. In the evening, Patrick declares his desire to participate in the next heist. In order to ensure that everything goes as planned, Bruno explains his position to him and advises him not to drink or do something foolish. Patrick remains behind while everyone departs, feigning to follow the plan, but he actually injects himself with a drug that causes him to faint. Everything proceeds according to plan during the subsequent raid until the store manager defies orders. To get him to cooperate, Drago needs to exert more force. Bruno then hands off control to Patrick, instructing him to keep an eye on the populace while he checks in on Drago. When he arrives, he tells him to hurry. Despite the cashier's repeated claims of having a heart attack and being unable to breathe, Patrick continues to yell at her. Patrick is adamant that the elderly woman restrain herself. As soon as Bruno notices this, he advises his cousin to calm down. The civilians fear as Patrick's gun goes off at that same moment. Patrick starts shouting back when Drago chastises him for being so irresponsible inside the car, forcing Bruno to step in and threaten to murder him with his hands if he doesn't stop. Fortunately, no one was harmed, and the police quickly arrived. While George believes he is a disgrace to society, the store manager is always boasting about how he was able to frighten the burglars away. In order to distract him from the current circumstances, one of his co-workers informs him about his impending promotion and says they must rejoice. They are sleeping at night when Bruno wakes up out of the blue and realizes something is wrong. He advises everyone that they must leave the building right away. They witness 3 police cars heading to their house while traveling, and they are all in awe of how these instincts have saved their lives. Before long, the group arrives in Paris, where they party all night. Ma says she doesn't want Drago to suffer the same fate as a previous criminal who received a life sentence in France. However, Patrick continues to use happy powder and begins to cause difficulties with one of the infamous crooks. Bruno asks Drago to resolve the matter since he knows the man Patrick just provoked and doesn't want things to go out of hand. The man quickly relaxes after seeing Bruno, and they eventually become acquainted. In the days that follow, the group heads down to Chelsea Danton, where Bruno poses as a gentleman who is there to buy jewels before revealing his true motivations when his new companion Steve interrupts. All of the jewelry that is on display is successfully packed. George had to come and settle a quarrel between two men at the station because they get so noisy. There, if he agrees to release Bruno, one of them will provide him with some information about his team. Bruno, meantime, intends to purchase a wristwatch that costs roughly $60,000 somewhere in another jewelry store. Annie is shocked when Bruno pulls out the $60,000 in cash and pays for the item, since she believes this would be another robbery. The police, using the information from the criminal earlier, start arresting Bruno's team one by one as they enjoy their time together without realizing it until they reach Bruno. Bruno denies knowing the other individuals that were taken when George queries him about them at the police station. He tells the officer a falsehood when he is questioned about his lover, claiming that she is only a street worker with whom he shared a bed. Knowing that he is lying, George threatens to put Annie in 5 years of prison as an accomplice. When he hears this, Bruno says that if George lets Annie go, he will confess all of his misdeeds. He is given his word by the chief of police, who requests that another officer take Annie away. Bruno is afraid that the prison officer would take his father's wristwatch and never give it back, so he begs if he can keep it. Bruno gives George all the information he requires when he accepts. Bruno gives Annie his final embrace outside before being transported to prison to await trial. He meets Jean Loup, a middle-aged man there. He claims he was sentenced to 12 years in prison for armed robbery. Bruno informs him that although he is awaiting trial, he will not be waiting for it. In the days that follow, Bruno meets with a prison guard and offers him his wristwatch as payment. In addition to having access to the mechanic room, where he grabs the items he needs for his escape, he can use that to send written messages to his girlfriend Annie. Jean looks around the cell for any guards. Bruno successfully extracts the iron rod on the window and flees while the last one does the last routine check. He tosses a rope to the opposite side outside. The rope eventually hooks after a few tries, and Bruno ascends first. When he reaches the summit, Steve is waiting for him in a car. He instructs Jean to follow suit, but Jean is too old to get high enough. He advises Bruno to go without him as he can't make it. George gets a call regarding the prison break the next morning. Steve and Bruno, meanwhile, go on the rampage and rob every jewelry store in the town. People now view him as a star on the newspaper. Since no one has been killed in any of his heists, George believes he is doing this for fun. Bruno and Steve visit George while he is eating breakfast at a restaurant. Before driving off to the state prison, Bruno tells him to concentrate on other criminals because he's so easy to catch. Steve pulls out his gun at the prison security and commands them to cooperate and unlock the gates while feigning to visit an inmate. Bruno saves Jean by going directly to his jail. While the guards quarrel over what just transpired, the three leaves the prison. Bruno gives Jean a new passport and some money inside the car, instructing him to find his way to Brazil and promising to meet him there later. Bruno then makes it to a hotel. Bruno calls a gold buyer after hanging out with his girlfriend Annie, and the buyer tells him to come in later that day to complete the sale. He arrives at the scene unaware that the police have been alerted about the sale, and after the exchange is over, a group of men unexpectedly surround him, making it easy for him to be detained. Along with his co-workers, including Annie, who is given only 18 months of probation for her role as an accomplice, Bruno is condemned to 5 years in jail at his trial. Bruno and George play cards together on the train ride to prison. "I'm not a criminal," Bruno assures George, "but I only steal from the rich because that's what the rich do to the poor." He is able to do it as a free man, but they are not incarcerated. Though he loves his excitement, George is perplexed and warns him that they are going to prison. Steve, who has been on the train the entire time, enters their compartment covertly at that point and threatens to shoot the guards if they move. Bruno gives George a smile before he and his cousin depart. Drago declines Patrick's invitation to accompany them. Bruno immediately approaches his lover, who is thrilled to see him. He extends an invitation for her to join him on a trip. Enjoying the occasion, Bruno steals some Cartier jewelry while feigning to go have ice cream. After learning about this, Annie begins packing. She laments that she is fed up with Bruno's constant thieving despite his attempts to stop her. She truly wants to get married to him and start a family, but if he goes to jail, she won't be able to achieve that. Bruno says he's thinking about quitting too, but only after one final theft. Annie becomes even more irritated by this and departs. The following day, Bruno and his companion enter a Cartier store with ease and steal jewels valued at millions of dollars by posing as wealthy patrons. News outlets around France report on the heist, and Bruno shows off his loot without hesitation. Now that everyone in the city is aware of who he is, he no longer feels secure. He is able to obtain a new passport with his friend's assistance, allowing him to visit Brazil and hide there. Bruno effortlessly transforms his appearance. When he eventually reaches the border, one of the customs officials flags him down for a standard inspection. The officer there suggests calling the embassy to verify his identity because he doesn't think his documents are authentic. Naturally, Bruno becomes anxious and doesn't want the embassy to be involved by the customs superior, so he begins to yell at them for holding him up and makes up stories to persuade them to release him. The police chief then arrives and takes him into custody. He is arrested, his trial begins right away, and the judge sentences him to 20 years in prison. Annie, who long ago pleaded with her lover to stop this, is shocked by this. His partner, who is her sole means of breaking out of the prison, is cornered and shot dead by an unknown individual. The police chief visits Bruno in prison to declare his retirement, stating that Bruno has been his best job to date and that he is pleased to retire with a prize for having caught him. Bruno congratulates him and says he would visit him and perhaps they could spend some time together. In preparation for his second escape from his cell, Bruno starts collaborating with the prison guards. They give him a walkie-talkie and tell him to wait for a call and instructions. Bruno moves through the prison with ease that evening, but he encounters a closed door. Since things aren't going as planned and two jail officers are already on their way, he has been instructed to return to his cell. But shortly after, his walkie-talkie starts to wail, making it easy to find him and punish him for leaving his jail area. Bruno jumps to his death because he is determined not to spend the next day in captivity. Movie ends here.